Hey guys, Daniel here. This is another video, and in this video, I am joined by the legendary Andreas Wisniewski. For those of you that don't know, Andreas is an actor, and he's worked on some of the greatest films of all times. He's worked on James Bond: Living Daylight. He played Necros, and he's also worked on Die Hard. He played Tony Vreski. But he's a fantastic actor. So Andreas has agreed to come on, so I'll be most likely annoying him for the next hour or so by asking him questions. But yeah, so Andreas, first off, how are you doing today?
I'm sorry, I didn't that bit I couldn't hear.
How are you doing today?
Doing very well indeed, thank you. How about you?
Another sunny day in Ireland, I imagine. Sunny in Germany.
No, it's pretty grey and drizzly, but at least it's not too cold. I'm a bit partial to warmish temperatures, so you know, the absence of winter is okay for me.
Yeah, well, we never get any sun over here in Ireland, so when it's sunny for now, that's good enough. We'll take it while we can get it. So,
I
um,
would imagine so, yeah.
but yeah, let's just get right into the question. So my first question is, how did you get into acting?
Okay, well, that's a little bit of an involved story. I started out as a ballet dancer, and that happened because that's what my mother took me to. Right? If she'd taken me to see drama in the theater, then that's probably it would have happened straight away. But that was not the case. She liked ballet, and that's what she took me to. And I wanted to be in the limelight, I guess. And that was the only way that I knew. So that's what I pursued. And I did that professionally. I studied it for many years, and then I did it professionally for 5 years. And what happened is that I was lucky enough to work with a man who did some form of theater that was more akin to acting than anything else. But we call it total theater, and what that means is that, you know, anything is allowed basically. Yeah. And he used to work with dancers because dancers are in very good physical condition, because it's a very, very strenuous job and very demanding on the body. And so was his theater. So he liked to do these things with dancers, these total theater production. And he just used these dancers and made them do whatever else was required. So that was my first encounter with acting on stage, and I loved it. To me, it was just very freeing, because ballet is incredibly formalized and stylized, and there's really no free way of expressing oneself. And to me, that was a revelation, and I couldn't really go back after that. So I then acquired some additional skills. Like, for instance, I didn't know what to do with my voice. I had no technique, and when you shout and you don't know what to do, then you get hoarse, and then you can't speak the next day. So I had to learn that, which most people learn in acting school, which I didn't do. I didn't go to acting school. I didn't think I needed to. I had, you know, mainly there's to say it so broadly, there's two things you need to be able to do as an actor. You need to be able to be on stage and not be inhibited by that fact. And then you need to have some skills, mainly voice related. So whatever there was physical, you know, fencing and stuff like that, I already knew all that. I had that, and I was comfortable on stage, so that was not an issue either. And my voice was an issue, and so I just went about to acquire that on my own, outside of school, took elocution lessons, and so that I could learn how to deal with my voice without ruining it.
And was it hard for you to make the transition from dancing into acting?
No, it wasn't really. I mean, as I said, that to my own feeling, it was very natural, because it was so freeing. Soon after I did couple of these productions on stage, I also did my first film, which was a sort of student film, very small film. That's a completely different thing from stage work, right? Because when you're on stage, you only get one chance to get it right.
Yeah.
You have to do it on the evening. You have to just do it. And if it's not right, then that's too bad.
Yeah.
Film is a completely different thing, because when you screw it up, you can do it again. Or you do it once and somebody has a better idea, you can do it again and you can improve it. So that's a different way of working. And I love that. I really like that. And these things came about without my doing much. Luck. That luck is a big part of this business, it seems. And my personal circumstances were such that I moved to London, and just like that, got a few little jobs. Like I did a music video with Russell, who was a famous director, very, very talented director. He did a music video for Elton John, and I happened to run into him, and he said, "You look right. You know, I need somebody to play a border officer at the East German border or something." And so it went like that. It was luck.
Yeah.
And the first big part was Necros.
Yeah.
And just being at the right place at the right time. If I'd stayed in Germany, it wouldn't have happened. But I was in London where they were casting it, and was lucky in the respect that they described me in the script. Somebody invented this guy looking just so, and then I walked in and I looked just like that. So sometimes that's how you get started. And that was the first big part. And
yeah. So was acting something you always wanted to pursue since you were young? And it's like, I just want to be an actor.
Well, I wanted to produce myself, in any which way. But that's just how it came about. But quite clearly, it's the one most natural to me. Dancing is very strenuous and very hard, and I'm really quite lazy. And singing I can't do to save my life. So acting it was.
Oh, wow. And growing up in Germany, did that in any way benefit your career? Or did that help you get into acting? Because I imagine the dancing and the ballet was in Germany. So I guess that would have kind of helped you.
No, I don't think it did. Mainly because growing up in Germany and being a native German and speaking German, that's an accent that is hard to get rid of.
Yeah.
And I struggled with that all along, and it quite clearly cuts down on the parts one can play.
Yeah.
So I tend to get, Eastern Europeans. I can do some Eastern European accents. That's easy, and I can do German, and I could do Austrian and French at a push. Italian, I don't have to. Chinese accent, I'll never need. But sort of native American and British are difficult.
Yeah. And
so that means there's only so many parts you can play.
Yeah. And your breakout role was, of course, as Necros in James Bond: The Living Daylight. So what was that like to get to work on that huge film?
Well, that was very luxurious.
Yeah. Would you say you felt pressured? Because James Bond, the franchise, it's huge, and so much brilliant actors have come to the film. And this was your breakout role. So did you feel pressured, oh, I have to get this right? Or?
No, but I should have. It was only that I was pretty arrogant and naive that I didn't.
Oh, and you touched on it earlier that most of acting is just look. And you walked in, and did they say that you look like Necros?
Yes.
Wow.
Well, let me qualify that a little bit. It's not that most acting is luck, but it's getting the jobs that is all luck.
Yeah.
Because mainly everybody is replaceable. There's always 10 or 100 or more people that can play any such part. And, I looked like that and I walked in there. That's true, but probably there would have been 10 other people that this would have also applied to. So you had to be the first one to walk in there, and that's the luck part. You still have to do it on the day, and that's a different ball game.
And getting to play Necros, he was such an iconic character. And spoilers alert for the film, but he doesn't have the greatest end. In the finale, he fights with Timothy Dalton, James Bond, on top of a plane. and he gets the boot. So what, do you remember anything about recording that plane fight scene?
Sure do. That was the hardest bit in physical terms. It took 3 days to just shoot the close-ups, and we did those at Pinewood Studios in London. And it was an enormous setup there. We had the whole stage, and they brought in half a plane, the back part of the Hercules plane, and suspended it there and hung this net from it. They built a 360-degree horizon, blue, to look like the sky. And then they built a miniature landscape from gypsum, so that looking down, it would look like the real thing, to match the shots that they'd done in America, really looking down. Yeah, it was an enormous setup, and it took 3 days. And I remember, I always tell the story, we'd been in there an hour, and Tim Dalton was saying to the director, "How long are we going to be here?" And he said, John McClane said, "Probably, 3 days." And Tim said, "I'm knackered already."
And what was it like to get to work with Timothy Dalton?
Tim is a really nice man, and a very serious actor, which I appreciate. A very good actor in my estimation. He's done some extraordinary things, which I hadn't all seen at the time, but nonetheless. And what's nice when you get to work with great people is that they tend to be super professional.
Yeah.
There's no bullshitting. We're doing all we can to make it the best we can, and everybody is pulling on the same string.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's really nice. You don't have to struggle. It's like you're making it the best you can.
And when you got the role in Necros, did you know at the time that he was gonna bite the dust at the end? Did you know that he was gonna die?
I can't really know. I mean, I assumed that he was going to die, because I usually do. But I can't remember. I can't remember when I got to read the script.
Yeah.
At some point, obviously, I became aware of it.
Yeah.
But, it's a while ago. It was last century, So.
Yeah. And so coming off James Bond, that has been such a great film to work on. But another film that you worked on is Die Hard. So what was it like to get to work on Die Hard? Because you played another bad guy. You seem to play all the bad guys.
Yeah, I did. At least in the big films, I always played a bad guy, it seems. Yeah, well, I have to probably disappoint you, because for me, Die Hard was a terribly boring job.
Yeah, I know. You touched on this a bit earlier.
I was contracted and got paid for, which was the nice part, for 7 weeks, which that only happens on major films, especially for what's really quite a small part. I went to the set to actually do any work 10 times, 10 days. 3 times I went for nothing, and I ended up playing chess with my movie brother, Alexander Budinov.
Karl, yes.
And for the remaining 7 days, I was dead for 3 in the elevator.
So yeah, well,
There's really not that much to do.
Easy paycheck, I suppose. Just have to pretend to be dead,
It sure was an easy paycheck, and boy, do I appreciate that now.
And getting to work with Alan Rickman, who played, the main baddie, Hans Gruber. What was that like?
Oh, Alan was great. I don't know whether you know that, but he died about 3 years ago. We became friends on Die Hard. We had a friend in common, and that was sort of our connection. And we became friends. And although I didn't get to see him because a hell of a lot, because he was away or I was away, or we weren't living in the same city. So maybe I only saw him, once a year or so. But it lasted for 20 or 25 years, whatever it was. And Alan was a great character and kind man, generous man, and a fabulous actor in my estimation.
And was it hard for you to get into the mind of bad guys, like to try and kind of act like a bad guy when you play bad guys in films?
Well, um, I didn't think so at the time because I studied this and I wanted to do exactly what you said to get into minds. And so I read up on the psychology of what makes people do, evil things, violent things and all that. And I understood that. I developed an understanding for that. But, when I now look at the movies, I cringe and I think, why did I do it like this? I could have done so much better. Now,
Yeah.
later, and sometimes years later, I have all the good ideas what should have been done.
So is it hard for you to look back on your work and you think, oh, I could have delivered that line better, or oh, I could have done this better?
Always, always. It's a cringy thing.
Yeah. Oh, well, you still did a good job in all the films I've seen, so you have that going for you, I suppose. Yeah, but on Die Hard, sorry to touch back on it, but like, did you shoot that in the building, like Nakatomi Plaza? I'm sure it has a real name, but was that all shot in the building, or did you go to studios and record, or how did that work?
It was all shot in the building. It's all shot in the building. It's this office block that is right next to what was 20th Century Fox. It was a movie studio. Was for many decades. It's one of the big traditional movie studios. We did nothing at the studio though, but the building was right next to it, and it was just being built. And so there were a couple of floors that we could just use, and they did to the fullest extent. And eventually, they when we were done, they finished the building.
Right.
But it was all on right there. There's nothing. They didn't build anything for the in terms of sets. I mean, they might have built something. I don't know. The flats. There were some outside scenes, of course. Not the entire film takes place in the building, but everything that looks like the building was the building.
Yeah, right. Wow. And there's one scene, of course, where your character, Tony, meets his unfortunate demise and he's sent down an elevator and he's dead. So do you remember trying to be dead? Like, was it hard for you to pretend like, oh, my character's dead? So
Well, you wear it out rather quickly.
yeah, I imagine. After the first film, after the first time you died, you were just like, yeah, all right. So another scene, yeah, another death.
Take 27. Okay, here we go then.
And yeah, and working with Bruce Willis as well as Alan Rickman. Do you remember anything about that?
Well, it's not like you might imagine that it's a sort of pally-pally situation.
Yeah.
When you work with the big stars, they tend to kind of stick to themselves. But I thought he was very nice, considering that I had to smash his head into a wall over and over and over.
Well, what more can you ask for if he was nice, after you smash his head into a wall? And so my last and final question on the Die Hard topic, do you consider Die Hard to be a Christmas movie? And there's been so much debate. You wouldn't believe it. People say, no, it is. I personally think it is, but I'd love to hear what you think, because I watched it every Christmas. What do you think?
Well, I had that, somebody wrote to me about that, and I've heard this question a few times, and my answer to this is, yes, it's a Christmas movie, but it's also a non-Christmas movie.
Wow, perfect. Please, both sides, And so moving off that, still kind of staying on the topic of films, getting to play bad guys, like, is that fun for you? I mean, I don't know if that's the right word, but would it be fun?
Yes.
Yeah.
Generally, it's fun. Plain and simple.
Yeah, you got to beat up Timothy Dalton and Bruce Willis. What more can you ask for? You've had a very good career.
Right, and that's one of the nice things about acting that you can do. You can get to sort of play with some things that you'd never do in your real life, that you wouldn't want to do in your real life, right? You can try out some sort of different personalities that are completely off the rocker, and that's great.
And if presented with the opportunity, would you prefer to play a good guy, I suppose, or are you happy playing bad guys?
Oh, I've played my fair share of good guys. They just never tended to be the big movies. I've
Yeah.
done it on TV. I've done it on in small films. It all depends, you know. That's good guy, bad guy is not the only criterion.
Yeah.
Ultimately, what you're looking for that defines a good part is if you get a sort of character that is well-rounded, right?
Mm.
I mean, to sort of to play a bad guy who does nothing, just shoot people with a plain expression, that's not very satisfying because it's not challenging.
Yeah.
You know, you want to be kind of you want to test yourself and push it. You want to
Yeah.
see how far you can take it and still make it look believable, right? That's really the thing. If people don't find a character believable, then you fail.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you get in good writing, you get characters that are sort of rounded, you know, and like if the bad guy turns out he loves dogs or something like that, right? That's a dimension
Yeah.
to a character, and that makes it much more well-rounded and believable. So that's always what you look for. Good or bad is really more of a secondary consideration.
Yeah, and when you get a role, do you try and give the character a backstory, I suppose? Like you think, oh, so I don't know, my character's been through this or this, or
Yes, that's very helpful because you know, especially if you're not the main character, not all about a character can be written in a script. I mean, that would be so boring to read. So yes, you have to kind of invent something like that.
yeah. And
Just so you have something to play with, right? You know, little things that are not so obvious, that make sense to you, and that people watching it probably wouldn't even notice that much. It's just kind of subliminally works to sort of make it a sort of more real character.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And not only did you work on films, you actually also worked on a music video with Elton John. So what was that like?
Well, that was my first film experience outside of Germany, and yeah, I don't have all that many memories of it now, but a lot of waiting around, which turns out to be a general feature, you know. So unless you play the main part, you always have to do a lot of sitting around.
Yeah. And was it different to work on a music video than say a film?
Yeah, it is, because you don't speak.
Yeah, that's probably the main thing I can imagine. Yeah. And so basically another film that you worked on, which you're also known for, is the Mission Impossible films with Tom Cruise. So what was that like, working on Mission Impossible?
Well, that was very impressive on several fronts. I mean, I have basically, with that tiny part that I played, I'm assuming you're talking about Mission 1.
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah, not. I had a tiny bit in 4 also, but still in 1 it was a very small part,
Mm.
and I think I experienced the hottest I've ever been and the coldest I've ever been. It came about that we were shooting in Prague, and I had to spend like a whole day on a balcony looking down, which like features in the film for about a second or something, but it was about a day, and it was just, you know, exposed to the wind and unbelievably cold.
Yeah.
And then because they knew it was cold, they'd given me all these really nice warm clothes, one of which was a rubber vest. And then a few months later, we were shooting the bit in the train at the very end. And that was I think that was the hottest day ever recorded in London. It was like 40 degrees centigrade outside. And they put this train on the sound stage, and they had to lit it with lights. They're called 10Ks. They're like lights that are this big, and they're 10,000 watts. It's like, you know, 150 light bulbs or something. That's just one of them, and they had about 20. so you know, it's like the power for a small village, and that these things get so hot, people were starting to faint on the stage. I mean, literally faint, you know, not just one, but several people fainted. And you know, from the time the director said action, you know, there's a couple of things that are happening. You know, somebody has to confirm the camera is in order, and somebody has to confirm the sound is in order. You know, and then the actors get going. There's between camera rolling and action, there's like 5-6 seconds, something like that. And in that time, we know all got touched up with makeup. And in those 5-6 seconds, we start dripping. It was so hot. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
And it had these enormous, like industrial-sized air conditioners that they'd bring into the train for every shot. And even then, it was hardly bearable. It was really incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, I also understood some things about stardom. And when we were in Prague, which at the time, you know, this was only a few years after the Iron Curtain had, I don't know whether you know what to do with that, had come down. I mean, Eastern Europe used to be totally closed off, and it was just sort of starting to open up.
Yeah.
And Tom would just get out of his car, and it would take 1 minute, and there were like 100 teenagers around him. It
Wow.
takes 1 minute. It was unbelievable. And this was Eastern Europe, you know. So then I understood, boy, this guy is really famous.
And you know, like, how is that for you? Because of course it's a spy film, but was it different from James Bond, the set wise and directing? Because I imagine they were both very different.
Yeah, of course, there's always differences. It was considerably bigger. It was bigger. It was a bigger budget film. There was bigger crew. You know, it just tends to happen. You know, every few years the biggest one so far probably was Avatar or something.
Yeah.
That was just, you know, the budget is the size of the Belgian budget or something. It's just they spend so much money. And, you know, there'll be another one. Anyway, this was a few years after the Bond movie, and I don't know how much they spent, 50 million or something. That was a lot of money at the time.
And is every film set you work on different?
What?
Is every film set, like every film set you work on, different? I'd imagine they would be all very different.
Yeah, so there's always something different. You know, there are some things in common. There's always a camera there.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always people.
But there's always some sort of flavor. I mean, the one of the nicest thing about the Bond movie was that they were all like, because they all knew each other, they were like a family.
Yeah.
Right, and it was so easy going and relaxed. With Mission Impossible wasn't quite as relaxed. It's an American production. They tend to be a little bit pushier. They tend to be, you know, they have equally top-notch people working on it in all departments, but it tends to be just a little bit edgier.
Yeah.
And Brian De Palma is the sort of director who is not so in your face, you know. He tends to be a little bit more removed, and if he wants you to know something, he'll tell someone to tell you.
Yeah.
So that all these things make a difference as to how the whole thing operates. But it's kind of like a film set is kind of like an organism, you know.
Yeah.
It's something gels, or sometimes it doesn't. Although I have very, very rarely encountered that, but it does happen that things just don't gel, and it's not working very well, and it's a huge struggle to get the movie made and so forth. Happens.
Yeah, and Mission Impossible, we just touched on this earlier. But working with Tom Cruise, did you work with Tom Cruise much?
No, very little. I think I had one bit with him. I only just met him, and people ask me what's he like, and I couldn't even answer the question.
And yeah, my next question is, what advice would you have for anyone looking to get into acting?
Don't do it.
The main advice, yeah.
Unless you have to. If
Not
you
by
have
choice.
to do it,
Yeah,
then,
yeah.
but no, I mean by choice. So, if what I'm saying is only do it if you're really driven to do it.
Yeah,
If you have a very strong urge to do it, um, it's very hard. It's so hard these days. I know, for instance, my middle son was applying to acting school in the UK. My children are Brits, so that's how it came about.
yeah.
And my understanding is that for every space, there's now 200 applicants.
Wow.
Yeah, that's bad. That's bad odds, right? That's really bad odds.
Not great.
So, and some of the people they turned down, he didn't get it, for instance, they are talented, right? I mean, there's just enough, there's so many talented people, but they still have to turn talented people down. And so it's a very difficult thing to get into, and potentially very frustrating. Also, you have to realize that one of the things you really have to come to grips with is rejection.
Yeah.
Somebody told me this once. I don't know whether it's true, but they said in the States, in the UK, it may be slightly different, but not all that much. You have to audition 60 times to get one job.
Wow.
That's terrible, right? I mean,
No,
you
that's
have
a
to
lot.
try and get the job 60 times, and then you get one, and some people don't even get that. So it's a hard thing to get into. So sometimes I say, if people ask me what's it like to be an actor, I say, well, it's great when it works, and when it's bad, then it really sucks.
Yeah. And like,
Right? There's nothing much in the middle.
yeah. And did you audition for a lot of films? Like, I imagine you auditioned for James Bond and, of course, Mission Impossible. And did you audition for all of those films, or like for Necros, did you just get the role?
No. For Necros, I had to audition, and I had to audition several times. They do a screen test. They put you on camera to see what you look like and whether you can do it. It's a typical thing for the bigger films. Entschuldige mich, mein Schatz, ich gebe gerade ein Interview. Ich bin noch 10 Minuten hier beschäftigt. Where was I?
Acting, auditions.
Yeah, auditions.
For Necros, you had to screen test for that and all?
Yeah, what they tend to do is they tend to do a screen test, right? Because there's too much at stake. They might like you, they might think you look right, but they wouldn't want to put you on camera because some things can happen. Maybe, who knows? Who knows? Maybe when there's a camera, suddenly you freeze up or something. They can't have that. The risk is too big. So they tend to do that. But I'm not very good at auditions. It's a kind of a strange thing to get the job is something completely different from doing the job. And I have always, I haven't always auditioned. There were, for small films, sometimes they would say they would give me an offer just because they'd seen me, and they didn't have to screen test me. When once you've done a couple of big movies, they know you can handle yourself in front of a camera. I much prefer that. I much prefer not to have to audition.
And were you ever nervous while filming, or like you're about to film, or like, I don't know, you're in a scene and then the camera's on you and you just kind of get a bit nervous?
Yeah, it happens. Like, for instance, they set up for an hour, here comes your big close-up, and you can't remember your lines.
Yeah.
That happens.
Oh, wow.
It's called a blackout. but generally, no. I mean, I just there's a bit of nervousness is good. It's just like a feeling of excitement of this happening, and that's helpful. Because I mean, you don't want anybody falling asleep in front of the camera, because that's just not going to work for the film typically.
Wow. And like, do you have a favorite, I don't know, film that you worked on or favorite set that you worked on?
Not really.
No?
No, there's something good to be said about each job. There are some people that you meet, something that was really fun to do, but it changes
Yeah. And like
from
we,
project to project.
oh yeah, and like when you get films and like you're auditioning for them, do they tell you what it's for? Would they say, okay, this is for Die Hard, this is for James Bond, or would they say this is for a project, or would you ever know that?
Well, that depends on a series of factors. If you're a young guy, they tend to tell you less.
Yeah.
But if you're well established, then they probably won't get away with telling you nothing. Um, I'll tell you a little bit that was quite amusing. Because with the Mission Impossible films, they had a problem that someone was leaking them before they were released. Um, when I was doing Mission 4, and that was a funny story because that came within 3 days, and I just worked on it for one day, and it was 3 seconds in the movie in the end. But I didn't see the script. I didn't know what was going to happen at all. And on the day, they gave me the scene, but I had to sign that I would not that I would return those 2 pages back to them.
Wow.
And they'd done it in a sort of special ink that the pages couldn't be copied. So
Wow.
you had to sign in and out for the scene. So like almost nobody got to see the whole script.
Wow.
That can also be the case, right? So they want to make sure that nothing gets out before the film.
And getting asked to return for Mission Impossible 4, did that kind of shock you?
Yeah, but that was a real surprise because somebody found me on Facebook.
Yeah.
Uh, the producer of the film found me on Facebook, and 3 days later I was on the plane to Dubai. That was
Wow.
not what you would expect.
Yeah, definitely not. And like now over time, what is it like to look back at your work and watch the films that you were in? Like, do you cringe? Because you were telling me earlier that you might.
Well, that's one aspect. I mean, it's also really nice to have worked on things like the Bond movie. That's such an enormous thing, and it carries on. And I mean, my children are not particularly interested. I don't think they've even seen them, but maybe one day, or maybe my grandchildren will, or who knows. Um, with Die Hard, it's nice to have been in what has now become basically a classic. I
Yeah.
mean, it was such an influential film. It spawned so many films of that type.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's really nice to have been part of it. Um, Me myself is much of a thing in it, and I mean, I can enjoy the movie without but ignore myself. I can do that,
Yeah.
and of course I've seen them a bunch of times, and when you see them with people that haven't seen it before, it's kind of nifty. Um,
Yeah.
well, I mean, it's an interesting question. I've been going through that. No, I mean, I'm 60 now, so I'm over 60. So that's I'm like 2 generations removed from when I started. And I'm looking back, and I think I really did very, very little. I did very, very little. I did, I don't know, 10 films or something, and 20 television things. So it's not much of a career, really. Um, I don't have any regrets.
Mm.
Um, but also it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't what I would have hoped for. Clearly, for a while, it looked like I was really going to have a major career. I mean, there were so many things that might have happened and never did.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I do appreciate that. I've worked with some of the best people in the business, you know, both in front of the camera and behind. And I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's hard for me to think of my life without showbiz.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, you've had a brilliant career. You've gotten to work on some, you know, fantastic films. And, you know, I think you've had a really good career. So it must be so fun to kind of think, oh, I was in that and I got to do this and all that. Is that fun for you to kind of think, oh, I remember James Bond, I remember Die Hard? Because not many people can say that they've been in James Bond. So, you know.
Yeah, that's true. And that's definitely an aspect I appreciate. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, if anyone would like to find you or contact you, or maybe, I don't know, like, is there anything you'd like to promote or anything?
Nothing much, nothing concrete at the time. I mean, I work on films, my own projects these days.
Yeah.
So I don't pursue and work in front of the camera. I mean, if somebody asks me, then I will certainly consider it. The last film, though, I did is 3 years ago. So I'm much more interested in doing my own projects, and they're not necessarily of that kind. You know, I have some documentary ideas
Yeah.
pursue, but nothing that's really worth promoting at this point, because they're all in kind of early stages.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I certainly appreciate you asking. If people want to find me, well, like you found me on Facebook.
Yeah, I tracked you down. Yeah. Yeah. If anyone would like to check out Andreas, make sure to go follow him on Facebook. But yeah, Andreas, what a pleasure it's been interviewing you. You're such a lovely guy. Thank you so much for coming on. It was so nice to be able to talk to you. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching, guys. And if anyone has any questions, just leave them in the comments below or anything. It won't get to Andreas, but I'll probably answer them. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, please make sure to like and subscribe. And please make sure to donate to the National Deaf Children's Society, link in the description. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Andreas, is there anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, thank you for a very professional interview.
Oh, that's completely fine. I was so nervous getting to interview a legend such as yourself. But no, thank you so much. It was so great to be able to talk to you. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.